Giants are 1-12 with Daniel Jones in primetime games. 1-12.
Sad.
What?
This is sad to watch. Russian Packers.
Yep.
Racing Parimutuel Wagering and Breeding Law, Section 102, provides that the New York State Gaming Commission shall consist of 7 members appointed by the governor, vying with the advice and consent of the Senate. 4 members being confirmed by the New York State Senate are necessary to afford the commission an ability to establish a quorum and to undertake action. This present meeting of the commission is now called to order. Ms. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
John Crotty.
Here.
Sylvia Hamer.
Here.
Peter Machete.
Here.
Brian O'Dwyer. Marissa Shorenstein. Jerry Skurnick.
Here. Ms. Secretary, please have the record reflect that a quorum of qualified members is present, thus enabling the transaction of business. Chairman?
Minutes of the commission meeting conducted on August the 3rd, 2023 have been provided by the members in advance. At this time, I'd like to ask the members if there are any edits, corrections, or amendments. Hearing none, Ms. Secretary, please let the record reflect the minutes were accepted. I now call upon our Executive Director, Mr. Williams, to give his report.
Thank you. Chairman O'Dwyer asked that I address the process and decision-making that surrounded the Pick 5 wagering at Saratoga Racecourse on August 6, 2023. He also requested that I discuss a number of equine fatalities that occurred during last summer's meet at Saratoga Racecourse, placing the meeting in historical context, discussing the Commission's responsibility in this day of the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, outlining what efforts have been undertaken to examine the situation and identifying, to the extent possible, any root cause. With respect to the Pick 5 issue, on August 6, 2023, NYRA programmed a late Pick 5 commencing with the 6th race. The morning card had the first and third legs running on the dirt, while legs 2, 4, and 5 were scheduled for the turf. As the horses were loading into the gate for the first leg, NYRA announced that, due to weather conditions, all racing for the remainder of the card would be taken off the turf, meaning legs 2, 4, and 5 would be transferred to the dirt. The late notice of the transfer meant that horse players had little time to cancel or change their Pick 5 tickets, as the first leg, race 6, went off at its scheduled time. The Commission's Pick 5 rules require that races changing surfaces after a betting pool is closed are considered all-win races. Accordingly, the first and the third legs remained, while legs 2, 4, and 5 were all win. The late Pick 5 ultimately returned $25 on a 25-cent bet, or 50-cent bet, excuse me. NYRA President and Chief Executive Officer David O'Rourke publicly suggested that they had failed to timely make the call to take the 3 races off the turf. And to make amends, NYRA needed to seed a late Pick 5 pool, which he did on August 12th with $100,000. The commission involvement in the Pick 5 issue was twofold. First, Mr. O'Rourke indicated that NYRA had requested the stewards to delay the start of the first leg, but that request was denied. And second, Mr. O'Rourke also indicated an intention to refund all wagers, but NYRA was not allowed to do so. With respect to the former, NYRA did not make their request to delay the start of the first leg until 2 horses had already been loaded into the starting gate. It's important to recognize that the conditions of this race, a maiden special weight for 2-year-old fillies. 9 fillies were entered, and review of their histories find that 7 of the 9 had never run in a race before. In other words, this was their first experience in a starting gate with other horses in front of spectators. The stewards, recognizing the fractious and unpredictable nature of the inexperienced 2-year-olds, recognized that backing out the horses after 2 had already been loaded and then delaying the start by the requested 10 minutes was an unsafe practice, hence they declined to do so. The stewards appropriately put the safety of the horses, the gate crew, and the jockeys first. As to the latter, NYRA could not cancel the entire wager and refund tickets, as all wagers were properly booked and the wager was being undertaken under existing rules. A cancellation of the wager would have disturbed the individuals who ultimately correctly picked the winners of the first and third legs. NYRA, had it chosen to do so, could have refunded, using their own money, the full value of all patrons making wagers via account wagering. This is something they determined not to do. As for the Saratoga fatalities, earlier this year, the Federal Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, or HISA, took responsible for the thoroughbred racing nationwide. While much attention has been focused on anti-doping and medication control rules and testing, the Act also places racetrack and horse safety squarely under their responsibility. In the arena of thoroughbred equine health and safety, the Commission plays a complementary role to HISA. The Commission continues to be responsible for the award of race days to licensed and franchised racetracks, and we continue to license racetrack management, who are ultimately responsible for the conditions of the racetrack, and trainers, who are responsible for the health and safety of their horses. That said, Commission staff, HISA personnel, and NYRA employees have worked cooperatively on issues relative to the Saratoga equine deaths, as we share common interests: the continued health of the equine participants and their riders, and the safety of the racing surfaces. Looking at the Saratoga meet in historical context, this year was not outside the norm. Overall, in 2023, Saratoga experienced a total of 13 racing and training fatalities. Over the past 10 years, the gross number of racing and training fatalities have ranged from a high of 19 in 2017 to a low of 11 in 2015 and 2018. The last 5 years before this year experienced 12, 12, 16, 12, and 11 racing and training fatalities. Using the well-established and statistically accurate metric of racing deaths per 1,000 starts, since 2009, the number of racing fatalities per year at Saratoga has ranged from 3 to 8. So that's the overall number of horse fatalities. This year saw 9 racing fatalities and 3,171 starts, resulting in an equine death rate of 2.84 per 1,000 starts. Previous years have seen rates range from a low of 0.9 racing fatalities per 1,000 starts in 2021 and 2022 to a high of 2.4 racing fatalities per 1,000 starts in 2017. Since Saratoga opened for training this April and through the end of the Saratoga race meet, there were 11,219 timed workouts and 4 training fatalities. All these occurred on the main track and none at Oklahoma. This corresponds to a fatality rate of 0.35 per 1,000 timed workouts. This is the lowest rate that we've seen in 10 years. And the training fatality rates have ranged between a low of 0.59 in 2016, 18, and 19 to a high of 1.2 in 2020. I feel it's necessary to note that the Commission's publicly posted equine breakdown numbers track higher than the Jockey Club's posted number, as the Commission tracks a racehorse over time. If the Commission Equine Medical Director determines a fatality is a direct result of an injury sustained during a horse's most recent race, regardless of time, the death is classified as a racing fatality. The Jockey Club Equine Injury Database only counts fatalities that occur within 72 hours of the race. For instance, the horse La Aguililla competed in the second race at Saratoga on August 25th. After it finished 5th, jockey Manny Franco quickly pulled the horse up. The horse was subsequently vanned off and returned to its barn, and then after a week was transferred to Rood and Riddle in Saratoga. Despite under excellent veterinary care, the horse continued to decline, resulting in it being humanely euthanized on September 13th. The Commission accounts for this horse as passing due to racing injury, while the Jockey Club, for instance, does not. As has been the practice in New York for the past 10 years, all equine fatalities at New York racetracks are reviewed in an effort to identify risk factors that may have contributed to those injuries. Over the years, numerous interventions have been put in place to improve safety at our racetracks. Rigorous application of this racing risk management program has reduced the incidence of equine fatalities at New York tracks by nearly 50% in the past decade. New York's goal is 0 racing fatalities. And risk management is an ongoing iterative process that includes performing a risk assessment to identify the factors, implementing interventions to address those factors, monitoring metrics to determine if interventions are successful, and then modifying current interventions or implementing new interventions as required to address any changes in risk. At this point, I'd like to turn the discussion over to Dr. Scott Palmer, who is the Commission's Equine Medical Director. Dr. Palmer has been working with HISA and NYRA regarding the Saratoga racing fatalities, and he can shed some light on some recent theories and developments. Scott?
Thank you, Rob. As you know, you just heard, any equine fatality at New York racetracks, whether racing, training, or otherwise, is investigated to identify any risk factors that may have contributed to the deaths. Each horse is sent to Cornell University's College of Veterinary Medicine for necropsy. Necropsy findings, exercise history, medical records, weather, racing surface conditions, and any other factors that are likely to have contributed to the fatality are reviewed. At this time, all 17 of the equine fatalities that occurred at the Saratoga Racecourse in 2023, that means even before the meet ended, or before the meet started, are under review. Each year, there are approximately 1,800 horses on the grounds or in private stables adjacent to the Saratoga Racecourse during late July through the Labor Day meet. Several hundred more horses reside on the grounds for training purposes, generally between April and November. In 2023, a total of 17 horses, or 1% of the approximately 2,000 horses stabled at Saratoga, died on the racecourse property. This number is consistent with 2012, 2016, and 2019 figures. For reference, in 2017 and 2020, 21 horses died on the grounds of the Saratoga Racecourse. Of note, the United States Department of Agriculture's National Animal Health Monitoring System surveys private farm owners across the country intermittently as to how many horses, mules, and donkeys are on their grounds. To be clear, these are not racehorses. They are equids. They are living and or are working on farms across the country. The survey asked the farm or stable owners how many of their horses, mules, or donkeys died during the past year. The most recent survey listed a mortality rate of 1.4%, statistically higher, if not comparable with, the mortality rate of racehorses at Saratoga. These statistics indicate that horses that race in New York are as safe, or if not safer, than those that live on farms and in non-racing capacities. In particular to the injuries at Saratoga, most exercise-associated equine fatalities are the result of musculoskeletal injury. These tragic incidents rarely have a single cause. Numerous individual horse and environmental risk factors are currently under review. Although the total number of equine fatalities at Saratoga in 2023 was statistically similar to previous years, the number of racing fatalities in 2023 was 3 times higher than seen in 2021 or 2022. Of note, these fatalities were clustered around the Whitney and Travers weekends. When investigating factors that may have contributed to an unusual cluster or increase in injuries, it is appropriate to determine what risk factors or circumstances were common to previous years of experience and what risk factors were unique to the period in which these injuries occurred. Many of the individual horse risk factors common to horses that experienced exercise-associated fatalities during the 2023 Saratoga meet were similar to those of previous years. Others were not. The type of injury is the first. For those horses that suffered exercise-associated fatalities, one commonality was the type of injury. The fetlock joint is the most common site of fatal musculoskeletal injury in racehorses across the United States. Published research studies of racehorse injury in both New York and California over the past 10 years found that fetlock injuries represented 48 to 50% of the fatal musculoskeletal injuries, respectively. However, during the 2023 Saratoga race meet, fetlock joint injuries represented 92% of all of the exercise-associated musculoskeletal injuries during the meet. This is a very significant finding. Another finding was the location of the incidents. 12 of the 13 exercise-associated injuries occurred in the final furlongs of the race or as the horses were galloping out after the race. The This finding suggests that fatigue was likely a factor that may have contributed to these injuries. Moving on to environmental risk factors. The most significant finding was the unprecedented amount of rainfall, 11 inches, that occurred during the 2023 Saratoga race meet, compared with 9 inches in 2021 and 8 inches in 2022. Surface change, you heard referenced earlier, is a term that's used to describe a situation where the amount of moisture in the turf surfaces is determined by racing officials to represent an unacceptable risk to the safety of horse and rider and would likely result in irreparable damage to the turf course itself. For that reason, the number of surface changes is a useful metric to quantify inclement weather. During the 2023 Saratoga meet, there were 65 surface changes. That's 16% of the turf races were moved onto the dirt, compared with 17 surface changes, that's 4% of the races, during the 2022 Saratoga race meet. Given these dramatic and unique findings, the moisture content of the racing surfaces of Saratoga has become a primary focus of the investigation. Existing research, interestingly, has found no correlation between the surface condition of the racetrack and exercise-associated catastrophic injury. In one recent study, the incidence of catastrophic injury was compared among racetracks classified as fast, sloppy, and muddy. No significant difference was found. However, it's important to understand that these classifications, that is, fast, sloppy, muddy, and others, are subjective assessments made by racing officials and others, and are not based on actual measurement of the amount of moisture in the racing surfaces. Consistency of the racing surface is the primary goal of racetrack maintenance. A consistent surface is considered to be a safe surface. The variables that contribute to consistency and safety of the racetrack include composition of the surface material, design, shape, that is, slope of the oval, and moisture content. Only one of these variables can change dramatically during a short period of time, and that is moisture content. Analysis of variance, called ANOVA, is a statistical test that is used to measure variation, that is, inconsistency, in a data set. In addition to comparing the average value of multiple data points, ANOVA tests compare the range and distribution of data points within minimum and maximum values in a group of numbers. The moisture content of the main dirt track racetrack at Saratoga was evaluated using this type of analysis. During the 2023 Saratoga race meet, multiple measurements of percent volume of moisture content were made twice daily at 15 points around the main dirt track and 12 points around the melon and inner turf courses. There were 2 exercise-associated racing fatalities on the dirt main track during the 2022 Saratoga race meet, when the spatial and temporal distribution of moisture in the racetrack was relatively constant. Conversely, there were 4 exercise-associated racing fatalities on the dirt main track during the 2023 Saratoga race meet, when the spatial and temporal distribution of moisture content of the racetrack was significantly less consistent. This finding suggests that increased moisture in the Saratoga main track and spatial and temporal variation of the moisture content during the meet likely contributed to the increase in the number of Saratoga's racing fatalities during the 2023 meet. In summary, the comprehensive investigation of the 2023 Saratoga race meet fatalities by HISA, NYRA, and the New York State Gaming Commission is ongoing and thus far identified the following preliminary findings. Fetlock hyperextension injuries comprise 92% of the musculoskeletal injuries that occurred during the 2023 Saratoga race meet. Fatigue was a factor in all but one of the exercise-associated injuries, as they occurred in the final furlongs of the race or as horses were galloping out after the race. Finally, the unprecedented amount of rainfall, 11 inches, that occurred during the 2023 Saratoga race meet impacted the consistency of the racing surfaces. A comprehensive report of this investigation will be made available to the public as soon as the investigation is complete. I want to thank you, Commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to share these preliminary findings with you. And I have one more thing I'd like to mention. Recently, there's been a lot of conversation about scanning all horses prior to racing with something called PET, that's positron emission tomography scans. You may have seen this in both in the general public literature and also in the racing magazines. PET scan is the abbreviated version of this, and PET scan is a form of advanced imaging that involves injecting a radioactive isotope into the horse and then using a sensor to image the localization of that isotope in areas of the body where there is increased metabolic activity, such as bone modeling or bone remodeling. Because of its ability to detect active metabolic processes, it can often detect abnormalities in bone and soft tissue before these abnormalities can be seen with other standard imaging modalities like radiography, MRI, or computed tomography. As such, PET is a fantastic diagnostic tool. However, PET is not an appropriate screening tool to detect horses at risk for catastrophic injury. Identifying horses at risk for catastrophic injury must begin with a screening protocol that is scalable, practical, affordable, and can be applied to every horse while training or while racing without regard to clinical indications of injury. PET does not meet any of these criteria. Wearable biometric sensors are best suited to accomplish this first level of screening. These sensors detect subtle abnormalities in a horse's gait that are not detectable with a human eye. They serve as a check engine light, if you will, that alerts us to the possibility that there's something wrong with the horse and that the horse should be examined by a veterinarian. Veterinary examination is the second level of detection of an abnormality that might predispose a horse to injury. The goal is to reach a diagnosis of musculoskeletal abnormalities during this exam, and typically they will use diagnostic nerve blocks, digital radiography, or ultrasonography to do so. If lameness is detected in a limb during this examination and digital radiographs or ultrasonographs are inconclusive, then advanced imaging such as PET can be employed as a final or third step in this process. The New York State Gaming Commission has been doing pioneering research with wearable biometric sensors to identify horses at increased risk of injury at NYS racetracks for the past 3 years. The results are promising. Sensors were placed in the saddle cloths of racehorses racing at Saratoga, Belmont Park, and Aqueduct in 2021 and 2022. These sensors measure acceleration in 3 dimensions during high-speed exercise. Thus far, this technology has been able to identify horses at risk for injury, but wearable biometric sensors are not quite ready for prime-time use at this time. Stay tuned for further developments. In summary, PET can play a very important role in the diagnosis of subtle musculoskeletal injuries of horses, but is not as useful as a level 1 screening tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. I have a question or two. First question is, I understand that New Belmont is going to use artificial surface versus dirt or what they're using now. Is that going to have any impact on injury?
Yes, it will. I anticipate that it will. It's a little bit of a complicated story, Chairman, but the short version is that over the past decade, synthetic surfaces have been installed in racetracks around the country. Most of them have been removed since they were installed. We've learned a lot in the last 10 years. Originally, those surfaces were purchased and installed with the thought in mind they would not require maintenance. But that's just not the case, and we know that those tracks do require maintenance. They change over time. The material composition's evolved quite a bit. So the current plan would be to install an improved version over the ones that were originally installed. So I want to make it clear that we're not talking about the same tracks that were put together about 10 years ago. Now, over the last 10 years, though, there's absolutely incontrovertible evidence that these synthetic surfaces are safer in terms of categorizing catastrophic injury than any other type of racetrack. The fatality rates are lower. They're lower than dirt. They're lower than turf. Now, the potential installation of a synthetic surface at Belmont in particular is really already underway, and it's not going to replace the dirt or the turf courses, but it will be in addition to those courses. It not only will have tremendous value in terms of making racing safer, but will also give better options for conditions from the inclement weather, so the horses ordinarily would, when they're taken off the turf, they would scratch and not race on the dirt. And with a synthetic surface, though, which is much more similar to turf than dirt is, most of them will stay and race. So it's going to improve racing. It's going to improve safety when those surfaces are put in place.
Any of the commissioners have a
Which
question?
you have a question.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is it the Dickinson turf, the one from Maryland?
Right?
They're using Tapeta.
That's the one he did, right?
Yes.
They did motion in it, right?
Say again?
Was it a Grand Motion and Dickinson sort of?
Well, I
Had
don't
that thing down
know
in
what role
Maryland?
Graham Motion played, but certainly Michael Dickinson was the primary mover in developing that surface.
Doctor, the two factors that you pointed, the fetlock injury, the fatigue factor. So you had 92% of the injuries, the fatalities were the result of a fetlock fracture.
Call it a failure of the fetlock joint.
Yeah. Why? Why the fatigue? And I guess my second question is it related to the second factor that you pointed, which is the rain and the increased moisture content?
Yes, it is. So they are connected, and the reason they're connected is that the racing surface has a base to it, a firm base, and then there's a cushion on top of the base. Excuse me, the cushion is composed of 85% sand, 15% silt and clay. Now that composition it's a very, very delicate balance in terms of getting the right surface tension in that cushion, which allows the horse to interact most safely with the racing surface. If you have too little water or too much water, that creates unsafe conditions. And just as an example, if you walk across a racetrack during the course of a meet, and when it's been raining or it's been watered aggressively, if you're wearing loafers, it'll suck the shoes right off your feet. And so what we're getting to here is as that horse lands on the racetrack, the fetlock joint is hyperextended into the racetrack. And when it's very wet, the conditions of slipping or moving that around are quite different. And as a horse picks the leg up to come out of the racetrack, it's harder to do that. While the body weight's rotating over that joint, he's being asked to lift it out of the surface. And so if the horse is fatigued, so those muscles aren't as strong as they ordinarily would be, if the horse is sticking into the racetrack because of the water content, then those horses are much more likely to have these injuries. It doesn't mean that the racetrack is unsafe for any horse out there, but it does mean if a horse has any particular conformation or previous history or whatever, training issues, that would be more challenging under those environmental conditions, then those are the horses that are going to have problems.
Were you surprised by the 92%?
I was shocked by the 92%. Been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like it. Now, it's always high. 50% is a big number. But to go from 50% to 92% is unheard of, in my experience. At least not here in New York.
Yeah, that's why I asked, what's the cause?
Weather.
You're trying to get the weather.
Yep. And it's the metrics that we're using to look at that are new. And they're very exciting because when you compare averages, there was no big difference in the percent of rainfall from one year to the next. But rain doesn't fall uniformly. And we have to look at rainfall differently. We have to look at trends in rainfall. We have to look at changes between morning and afternoon. We race in the afternoon. We train in the morning. We had no train fatalities on the Oklahoma track in the morning. We had 4 at Saratoga on the main track. So again, there's only one thing that can change between morning and afternoon. You can't change the geometry of the racetrack. It's got to be moisture. So what a major conclusion of this study, this review, is that not that we have an answer to that, how to take care of that, but it's a clear indication for aggressive research. We've done this looking at new ways to look at moisture, trying to come up with numbers where we can determine safety and non-safe surfaces. And I think that's going to be hugely important, make a wonderful contribution going forward. So as horrible as this meet was, I think it's going to lead to, just like the aqueduct situation, it's going to lead to change that will improve racing going forward.
Any other commissioners? Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
On to rulemaking, I think. New York State Racing Parimutuel Wagering and Breeding Law 10419 authorizes the Commission to promulgate rules and regulations that it deems necessary to carry out its responsibilities. To that regard, the Commission will, from time to time, promulgate rules and rule amendments pursuant to the state APA. Today, we have 2 rules for adoption consideration and 1 rule for proposal. Before we commence discussion of these items, I note that the attending veterinarian examination and thoroughbred racing proposal came off public comment on September 18th, but was not advanced by staff today. I'd like Mr. Williams to provide an overview of why consideration of this rule was deferred.
Sure. In July, the Commission proposed an amendment to Rule 4007.5, which concerns qualifications to start. The proposed regulation would require thoroughbred trainers attending veterinarian to examine a horse within 72 hours of a race, as well as within 72 hours before a workout, to determine the horse's fitness to participate in either the race or workout, with the horse being prohibited from entry into a race or workout unless such evaluation results in a determination that the horse is fit. Since the rule was proposed, there's been numerous circumstances that have changed. First, During the latter part of the Saratoga meet, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority required their veterinarians to be on track during morning workout sessions. It's my understanding that these additional veterinarians intercepted numerous horses as they headed to or commenced morning exercise and discontinued some horses' ability to exercise. Second, in the wake of the racetrack deaths at Saratoga, HISA required that a HISA veterinarian conduct a post-entry soundness examination from the point of their intervention at Travers through the end of the meet. Historically, this post-entry examination has been allowed to be conducted by a local regulatory veterinarian. The requirement that a NYRA regulatory veterinarian perform the race day soundness examination remained unchanged. Third, following the Commission's rule proposal, NYRA adopted a House rule that accomplished much of our proposal. Namely, as a condition 2, and in consideration for a trainer being permitted to race, conduct an official timed workout, or train any horse at Aqueduct, Belmont, or Saratoga, the trainer and the trainer's attending veterinarian are required to have an entered horse examined by a trainer's attending veterinarian during the 3 days immediately preceding to the entry of the race for the express purpose of evaluating the horse's fitness to race and ensure that it has been found fit by the attending vet. A trainer is also prohibited to work a horse unless the horse has been examined by the trainer's attending veterinarian during the previous 5 days immediately preceding the workout and was found to be fit. Finally, there's a little bit of uncertainty right now as to whether the HISA veterinary training presence will continue and whether HISA will continue to require their veterinarians to conduct pre-race examinations. NYRA House rules are going to remain in effect at least through December 31st at minimum. In addition to those changes, the Commission received numerous public comments on the proposal. Some 26 comments were received, 12 from thoroughbred owners, 9 from trainers, 3 from veterinarians, and 2 from horsemen's organizations. In general, the comments congregate around 3 different subjects: cost, effectiveness, and veterinary availability. Universally, those commentators that reference cost were concerned with the overall expense of keeping an animal in training. While none referenced the anticipated cost as being exorbitant, most reflected a concern of yet another additional expense, already on top of the HISA expenses that have been recently imposed. Several Finger Lakes owners noted that any fees associated with the examination would necessarily impact them more significantly than NYRA owners given the purse differential. With respect to effectiveness, the comments were varied. Several raised concern with the 3 days being unrealistic given practical racing office operations and administration. Others thought that the 3-day time period was inappropriate given a horse can be medicated to pass its 3-day examination yet be clear enough to race and ultimately be tested clean. Others suggested the experience of Churchill Downs was significant in that they shut down the race meet due to some fatalities, despite having a rule similar to that's being proposed. The availability of equine veterinarians was also a common theme, with virtually every comment raising concern, especially at Finger Lakes, with the availability of staff to undertake the proposed required certifications. Some commentators raised concern that newly licensed veterinarians would not be effective as they don't have enough experience to be able to adequately make any new evaluation, and they've had great difficulty in attracting veterinarians with experience. So overall, there's numerous suggestions that the Commission staff are considering. Several commentators suggested that should the Commission go forward, that perhaps we phase it in implementation, requiring post-entry examination be required first before pre-workout examinations be considered. Several commentators suggested that Finger Lakes is unique from NYRA, with a substantially reduced number of racing or training fatalities over time. Accordingly, there were suggestions that Finger Lakes be excluded from any rulemaking requirement. Many also questioned the implementation methodology, suggesting that the process by which an attending veterinarian examination be transmitted be clearly established before the rule is adopted. And several suggested that the methodology needs to be simple, to limit any potentially burdensome experience on already overworked attending veterinarians. One commentator suggested that perhaps trainers need to negatively qualify for heightened level of security, perhaps only following a catastrophic breakdown in their stable. And numerous commentators suggested that the commission revise the rule to require pre-entry certification. They suggested this would be more timely to when the horse would be competing and eliminating potentially masking medications. So the commission staff will continue to review the comments in the context of the changing landscape and will conduct some additional contact with the Finger Lakes and Naira horsemen while a staff recommendation is being developed.
Thank you. I think it's important. This is a very important regulation. Obviously, it deals with the health and safety of our equine athletes. And I think it should not be rushed. And I'm glad that we've gotten so many good comments on it. And I hope, and I know the staff will take those into consideration and bring it back to the commissioners with suitable recommendations. Thank you for being done that. Now we go on to our regulations. Mr. Williams, will you outline the first item?
Certainly, for commission consideration is the adoption of revised proposed rules to govern interactive fantasy sports. The commission published a notice of proposed rulemaking in the July 20th, 2022 State Register and received public comment. Upon consideration of the public comments, the commission published a notice of revised rulemaking in the August 2nd, 2023 State Register. This rulemaking's public comment period expired on September 18th. 4 public comments were received from the Coalition for Fantasy Sports, FanDuel, Mojo Interactive Incorporated, and Vivid Seats LLC. Additionally, 1,462 form letters solicited by Prize Picks, an IFS provider that wishes to operate in New York, were received.
There are a number of comments that we have received from the Coalition for Fantasy Sports, from FanDuel, from Mojo Interactive, from Vivid Seats LLC, and from the Prize Pick 4-letter campaign. The commissioners have all received those comments and have read them. I will take a motion to take.
I do want to note that the commission continues to receive some comments and concerns regarding interactive fantasy sports well outside the public comment period. And we're going to continue to review those, and should we determine any of them are appropriate, we'll advance additional amendments in the future.
So I will take a motion to take those and put them in the record as read.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, they are received into our record as read. Now we have a motion to adopt. Okay, we've gone over the rules, and as again Mr. Williams has indicated, we've gone over the comments and the staff recommendations. Staff has recommended that we adopt these rules in regard to fantasy sports. They have a motion to adopt the rules.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. As opposed? It's adopted unanimously. Commissioner Shorenstein not voting. Mr. Williams.
For commission consideration is adoption of rules to regulate sports wagering advertising, marketing, and promotion. The commission published a notice of proposed rulemaking in the August 2nd, 2023 State Register, meaning this rulemaking's public comment period expired on October 2nd, 2023. The proposed rule would, among other things, firmly establish licensee responsibility for the content of their advertising, marketing, and branding, prohibit false, deceptive, or misleading statements, require marketing and promotions to clearly and conspicuously disclose material facts, terms, and conditions to potential customers, require an opt-out function to block receipt of future direct advertisements, prohibit designs aimed primarily to attract underage persons, prohibit advertising to a target audience that is reasonably foreseeable to comprise underage persons, and prohibit advertising on college and university media. Elements of the proposal were derived from the American Gaming Association's Responsible Marketing Code for Sports Wagering and from sports wagering advertising regulations in several other states. 3 comments were received from FanDuel, a licensed mobile sports wagering operator, from iDevelopment and Economic Association, or IDEA, which is a trade association that advocates on behalf of a certain segment of the industry, and from the New York State Broadcasters Association, which represents a variety of interests in broadcasting. The broadcasters made a few suggestions to clarify intent, 2 proposals, in fact, that the staff believes are appropriate, and have circulated that language to each of the members of the commission to accomplish that goal. These potential additions, if accepted by the commission, would be non-substantive changes in the nature of clarifications that would be noted in the notice of adoption, consistent with State Administrative Procedures Act, Section 202, 5C, Romanet 3, and not require a rule reproposal. Staff recommends that the commission adopt this rulemaking with the proposed clarifying language as circulated.
First of all, so let us take the fact that we have received comments from FanDuel, IDEA, and the New York State Broadcasting Association. Those are in our written materials, and I would take a motion to accept those in the record and deemed as read.
So moved.
Commissioner Prati.
So moved.
A second. Commissioner. Second. Commissioner Muscat. All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, shall we take the amendments first, Mr. Executive Director?
I think you can take the whole thing as a package.
Okay, then let us take the whole thing as a package. May I have a motion to adopt the rule?
So moved.
Mr. Hamer. A second.
Second.
Commissioner Prati. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Mrs. Shorenstein not voting.
The State Administrative Procedures Act provides that a rule may be filed as a consensus rule if no person is likely to object to its adoption, and the rule either repeals regulatory provisions which are no longer applicable to any person, implements non-discretionary statutory standards, or conforms a rule to these standards, or makes technical changes or is otherwise non-controversial. In summary, the law permits outdated rules, rules which are required by law, technical rules, and unobjectionable rules to be filed as consensus rules. On August 3rd, 2023, the Commission authorized a consensus rulemaking proposal regarding claiming rules revisions in thoroughbred racing following significant consultation with industry stakeholders, including NYRA and Finger Lakes Management, the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, and the Finger Lakes Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association. The consensus rulemaking proposal was published in the August 23rd, 2023 State Register. The Commission received 1 public comment from an Indiana-based horseman who disagreed with the proposal. The commentator suggested 30 days was plenty to require a claimed horse not to race outside New York after a claim. The commentator further claimed that the proposed rule would make it more difficult for horse ownership to be cost efficient. This negative comment negates the consensus. Staff now recommends the Commission withdraw the previously proposed consensus rulemaking and propose the same as a standard rulemaking.
Commissioners, any questions on the consensus withdrawal? They have a motion to withdraw the consensus proposal.
So moved.
Commissioner Sterling. They have a second on that.
Second.
Commissioner Hager. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Shorenstein not voting. I also thought we were going to have just a quick update on the casino licensing.
Yeah, from a practical perspective, the round two questions for the casino licensing process or for the RFA are due on October 5th, the end of the, October 5th or 6th? 6th. At the end of the week, this week. We anticipate immediately going to start triaging those, and hopefully we won't get 600 plus questions again this time. The gaming facility location board members themselves have asked to conduct a meeting. They want to consider the proposed rules that they had, and they want to address some technical matters relative to timelines and some scope of some of the answers of the questions that we had hesitated to provide clear direction on during the round one questions. That meeting is anticipated to be conducted somewhere around the 3rd or the 4th week of October. At the conclusion of the answers to the round two questions, applicants will have 30 days to submit their response to the request for applications. And then we're off to the process for the community advisory committees.
I know some of the commissioners have asked that we meet in joint session, basically just to thank them for their help and their work and to get to know them better. Of course, ultimately, they will have a very important decision and appreciate their work. So hopefully at our next meeting or shortly thereafter, at some point in time, we can have a joint meeting with them just to resolve to get on the same page.
I can certainly arrange for that.
Commissioner, is that?
Sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess we're on to adjudications. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams.
Today we have one matter for adjudication in the matter of Linda Rice. On June 7th, 2021, the commission issued a findings and order reapplying for licensure for a period of 3 years upon a finding that Rice repeatedly engaged in improper practices over a period of years by soliciting and receiving access to non-public information about race entries in violation of Commission Rule 4042.1F. Rice brought an Article 78 proceeding and declaratory judgment action to challenge the Commission's determination, claiming that the Commission's decision was not supported by substantial evidence and the Commission's improper practices rule was unconstitutionally vague. She obtained a temporary restraining order from the Supreme Court, Schenectady County, which then transferred the Article 78 substantial evidence issue to the Appellate Division, 3rd Department. Denied Rice's claim for declaratory relief on the constitutional question and continued the temporary restraining order pending the Appellate Division's determination. The Appellate Division, 3rd Department, in a judgment dated June 8, 2023, held that the Commission's determination that the improper practices rule had been violated was supported by substantial evidence, rejected Rice's constitutional claim, but overturned the penalty, concluding that a 3-year revocation was disproportionate to the offense and so shockingly unfair as to constitute an abuse of discretion as a matter of law. The Appellate Division further concluded that a license revocation was entirely unwarranted and remitted the matter to the Commission to reassess the penalty. Materials regarding the adjudication have been recirculated to each Commissioner, and at the request of the Chairman, both Commission and Rice Council were requested to update their post-hearing brief with respect to penalty recommendation. Both councils did, and such material was circulated to each Commissioner. The Commission considered this matter at a meeting conducted pursuant to the judicial or quasi-judicial proceedings exemption of New York Public Officers Law, Section 108.1.
Today, the Commission acted on a remand from the Appellate Division, 3rd Department concerning the trainer Linda Rice. The Appellate Division agreed with the Commission's finding that trainer Rice had blatantly broke the rules of racing by conspiring with others to choose the optimal races for her horses. The Appellate Division, however, determined that any revocation was unwarranted. We respectfully disagree with that decision, but are constrained by law the following. The original fine of $50,000 was predicated on a 3-year revocation. Since that is now not extant, we have decided on the basis of the record that was before us, and I might note that the entire record was before every commissioner, including the briefs and the hearing below, that we will increase the fine to $100,000. And we therefore impose a penalty on Trainer Rice of $100,000. The vote was unanimous in that regard. The next item on the agenda, consideration of Fanatics ownership, acquisition of PointsBet. Mr. Williams.
Chapter 59 of the laws of 2021 amended New York Racing Pari-Mutuel Wagering and Breeding Law sections 1,367 and added section 1,367A to authorize mobile sports wagering when the sports wager is made through virtual or electronic means from a location within New York and is transmitted to and accepted by electronic equipment located at a licensed gaming facility. The statute directed the Commission to conduct a competitive bidding process to award licenses to mobile sports wagering platform providers. Pursuant to that authority, on July 9th, 2021, the Commission staff issued a request for applications, or RFA, to award a license to at least 2 mobile sports wagering platform providers, such that the result would be hosting of no less than 4 mobile sports wagering operators. In response to the bids received, an evaluation committee advanced for licensing award as a platform provider, Sports Information Services Limited, doing business as Canby, with American Wagering, Inc., doing business as Caesars Sportsbook, Empire Resorts, Inc., doing business as Resorts World Bet, PointsBet New York, LLC, doing business as PointsBet, Rush Street Interactive NY, LLC, doing business as Rush Street Interactive, and WSI US, LLC, doing business as WinBet, as platform providers and/or operators. And Betfair Interactive US LLC, doing business as FanDuel Sportsbook, as an additional platform provider and operator, with Bally's Interactive LLC, doing business as BallyBet, BetMGM LLC, and DraftKings as platform providers and operators. Chapter 59 of the laws of 2021 did not create a new licensing scheme for mobile sports wagering. Rather, the RFA and proposed rules by the Commission identified platform providers and operators to be licensed equivalent to casino vendor enterprises. On November 2nd, 2021, the Commission met and accepted the licensure recommendations of the Evaluation Committee. Later that same meeting, the Commission adopted rules governing, among other things, various licensing requirements. Staff was left, consistent with practice, with evaluating and determining whether and when each platform provider and their operators were qualified for the appropriate license. A subsequent evaluation found all platform providers and their license or their operators suitable for conditional licensing and were accordingly licensed. As has been widely reported, Fanatics agreed to acquire PointsBet US assets. As a background, FBG Enterprises OpCo LLC, doing business as Fanatics Betting and Gaming, a subsidiary of Fanatics Holdings, Inc., entered into an agreement to purchase PointsBet USA's subsidiary PointsBet New York LLC, a platform provider and operator licensed in New York since January 24th, 2022. The purchase agreement was signed on May 14th, 2023, approved by the PointsBet Board of Directors on June 26, 2023, and finalized by shareholders on June 29, 2023. PointsBet Holdings Limited, an Australian-based iGaming and sports wagering company founded in 2015, with operations in Australia, the United States, Canada, and Ireland. This transaction only involves the U.S. subsidiary, which launched in January of 2019. Fanatics Holdings, Inc. operates as a holding company. Through subsidiaries, Fanatics Holdings operates as a manufacturer and online retailer of licensed sportswear, sports collectibles, trading cards, and sports merchandise, as well as a sports betting and iGaming operation. Practically, Fanatics is advised that they will continue to use PointsBet's existing technology stack that has been deployed in New York. At present, that structure consists of a system firewall that passes a wager to the server housed in Resorts World Catskill. The server has redundant network infrastructure provided by 2 different internet providers and is continually self-tested with systems and organizational controls type 2, threat hunting, and distributed denial of service attack detection. Fanatics will continue to use advanced encryption, standard 256 encryption for the communication to and from the server. Fanatics will also maintain the use of PointsBet mobile application. Fanatics is committed to the continuation of the current PointsBet internal controls, house rules, back-end reporting tools, and commission access, responsible gaming plan, and the existing Know Your Customer vendors for customer confirmation. They will, however, utilize an outside entity to triage their customer service complaints, which is a different approach than that was taken by PointsBet. This, they tell us, will ensure a seamless transition operationally for customers who are currently wagering through the existing PointsBet platform. Fanatics is also advised that they plan to holistically evaluate the PointsBet operation and will seek incremental prospective changes as they determine prudent and appropriate. From a licensing perspective, commission standards for licensing require that each mobile sports wagering platform provider and operator are licensed as a casino vendor enterprise using standards found in New York Racing Parimutuel Wagering and Breeding Law, Section 1326, and Commission Rules, Parts 5303 and Part 5307. Commission staff was notified of the anticipated PointsBet sale in April of 2023. Shortly thereafter, Fanatics submitted applications and documentation illustrating their ownership structure, organizational charts, and principal management employees. Commission staff reviewed the materials and subsequently identified subsidiaries and individuals requiring a casino vendor enterprise or key license. In all, the commission received paperwork from Fanatics Holdings and their subsidiaries, and additionally, nearly 24 principal or key personnel license applications have been filed and reviewed. All corporate and individual materials have been reviewed by the Licensing Bureau pursuant to the licensing criteria standards of Racing Law Section 1323-2A and 1323-2B for informational deficiencies, criminal history, financial stability, and character and fitness. Additionally, all PointsBet staff that are being retained have filed the necessary paperwork to update their license status. After substantive review of all licensing material consistent with the reviews conducted for the initial information or platform providers and operators, the Commission Licensing Bureau staff have determined that the submissions are full and complete and no disqualifying elements have been identified. Division of Gaming staff has reviewed all operational components of the proposed Fanatics operation in a manner consistent with the review conducted for the initial platform providers and operators and have determined that they meet all standards necessary for operation. Accordingly, staff recommends approval of the transaction. Should there be any questions here with us on our side is Manager of Licensing Christy Phillips, Division of Gaming Director Tom Annapolis, and Deputy Director Jim Gugas. I would also like to recognize that we have some Fanatics representatives here with us. My principal contact with Fanatics has been through Dwayne Morris's Frank DiGiacomo, and I'd like Mr. DiGiacomo to introduce everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Frank DiGiacomo from Dwayne Morris. He's joined by my partner, Adam Berger, and from Fanatics, Adam Game, Ari Borad, and Alice Smith.
He actually said it. It was under his prop.
Thank you. Gentlemen and lady, let me have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to, before we get to anything, I want to thank our staff. I understand that you have put Fanatics through the ringer, made them the voluminous work being done by all of you, and the Commission thanks you for the work that you've done. Let me ask you here, I know our executive director has recommended. Do you have any further recommendations or comments on the application?
I believe Mr. Williams' comments based on the weakness right into the record, and our recommendation still stands.
And would you like to comment on the cooperation of with the company of Fanatics in terms of getting the materials into you and all of that?
The Fanatics has been in regular contact with the commission, either at their request or respond to any questions or inquiries that we've had. We've had no issue regarding the commission.
Commissioners, do you have any questions at all of our staff? No. Okay. I have a question for Fanatics, and let me just address that as a concern, actually. I've been going over the materials. I've noted that one of your subsidiaries is Topps Trading Card. As you well know, the commission has, over the past year, been very concerned about advertising and promotions to people that are underage. Obviously, the concern I have is the trading cards are meant in large part for people that are under the age allowed to participate in betting. In fact, I have, looking over the materials, I see many superheroes and stuff that I wouldn't know about, but my grandchildren certainly would. Can you give us an assurance that there would not be any sort of cross promotions between the trading cards and the sports betting?
So we're at I'm a co-founder and chief of staff, so we'll handle that question for us.
Sure. So one of the, and I think in a lot of the materials you provided, the goal really of Fanatics is to deliver the best experience for sports, whether it's in collectibles, whether it's in commerce, whether it's in betting. I think to do so as a responsible betting operator, you have to abide by the rules that apply to avoiding from marketing two items. It's paramount importance in the industry, both in New York and in other states. We currently do advertise on Fanatic Commons. Prior to doing that, we did extensive research about the age demographic on. I think one advantage we have in advertising to our own customers, we actually have a lot more data than if we didn't advertise to the general public. So the moment we do advertise with the commerce platform, based on data which is north of 98%. We currently do not advertise the collectible business at all. And before we would do any advertising for the collectible business, we would do a similar amount of research to confirm that this is not correct. And so, to the extent, for example, trading cards sold as superheroes from your children, we do not.
Let me just say, to follow up with that, because obviously those of us that have studied this know that the juxtaposition between Fanatics and PointsBet is that you're involved in, have a list of people that like sports and are involved in sports, and buy your jerseys and whatever. And I would assume at some point in time you may or decide to have a promotion on a cross promotion on a jersey versus a bet. I think that just makes sense to me. I think the real problem that I'm grappling with here, that's unique to you among all of our licensees here, is that there is a potentiality of you taking that portion of your business, which is collectible or trading cards or whatever you call them, and using them in a promotion to encourage sports betting, which in my mind would be in my mind at least would be really impermissible. I think what I really need from you is a representation that will not occur.
You can make that representation. What I'd ask is that we will all engage with the staff. And prior to doing anything that Jacob, for the representation given here today. We discussed it with William, Indianapolis, we'll hear your concerns and make clarifications to avoid multiple flexibility to support the time that it is possible.
Okay, that's fair enough. Anybody else have any questions? May I have a motion to approve the transaction?
So moved.
Commissioner Crotty?
Yeah.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous with the Commissioner Shorenstein now. Excuse me. Any further business before the commission? That completes today's published agenda. I'd like to make a couple of remarks before we adjourn on two items. You will recall that DraftKings, one of our licensees in sports betting on September 11th, that used the tragedy of 9/11 to promote a parlay bet on New York sports teams. All of us who read this were appalled by the promotion, and our staff issued a statement calling it reprehensible. In response, I had the staff write to DraftKings to ask for assurances that this type of behavior, which was reprehensible, would not be repeated. Of course, good taste cannot be legislated or regulated, but I was concerned that there was not a valid filtering process in place, especially given that regulations that we have established today. I'm happy to report that I am meeting with our executive director on Friday with Matt Kalish, the head of DraftKings, in our Schenectady office at his request so that we can establish a genuine dialogue to assure that this improper and disgusting advertising does not repeat itself. And my second point, last month I directed our horse racing and pari-mutuel wagering division to examine the matter of licensed trainers owing significant back pay to workers, including hundreds of thousands of dollars in H-2B back wages. Most trainers in New York and workers at New York racetracks comply with the law. What we learned of trainers not paying workers, we hold them accountable. For example, a trainer was recently ordered by the U.S. Department of Labor to pay $204,999 in back wages, fines, and penalties. This is not the first time that this particular trainer and his stable have been ordered to pay back wages. Accordingly, the commission requested the trainer to provide appropriate employment records as part of its review. The commission also requested the trainer to explain why he believes he continues to meet the New York State standards for licensure. We have received that response and are reviewing that in terms of any potential future actions. In the future, to properly identify any licensees engaging in bad labor practice, we forged a partnership with the New York State Department of Labor so the commission is notified when complaints regarding a trainer's business practices spur an investigation. This bridges the regulatory gap so that when we learn of trainers engaged in practices that shortchange their employees, we can consider further action regarding the licenses. This should be fair warning to all. Just as we expect our equine athletes to be treated with dignity and respect, so too we expect all who work in the industry to be treated similarly with dignity and respect. want to thank the Department of Labor, New York State Department of Labor, Commissioner Roberta Reardon, for continuing to partner with us to protect the thousands of workers who take care of racehorses. And I can assure you, commissioners, and the general public that this commission does not take those type of violations lightly. That concludes today's agenda and my remarks. Do any of the commissioners have any remarks that they wish to say at this point? Given so, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Ms. Gernick?
Second.
Mr. Hamer, all those in favor?
Aye.
This motion, this is adjourned.
All right.